Antenatal and postnatal depression, that is depression occurring during pregnancy and after delivery of the baby, is very common. It's very sad that 1 in 5 women in fact experience this terrible depression, but it is many causes behind the significant mental illness. We like to think about the cause in a framework that includes biological factors, psychological factors, and social or environmental factors. In the biological factors, it must be stressed that the hormones, particularly the female hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and the other hormones that go to make these hormones, are really significantly affected during pregnancy. There are very high levels during pregnancy, and then a sudden drop as the baby is delivered. And then there are other hormones like prolactin that start to rise in order to make breastfeeding possible. So we think that this change in the hormones is part of why depression might be occurring for some women in pregnancy and some women soon after the baby is delivered. In other biological factors, we need to consider genetic vulnerability. While it is not clear, and it will not be a simple genetic model, it is the fact that in many families, postnatal depression or antenatal depression seems to run. So we have to think about the genetic vulnerability that some women have for developing depression. And there's some of the biological factors. The psychological factors include such things as difficulty in coping with the stress, because anxiety is very common in pregnancy. Will my baby be normal? Will I be able to be a good mother? These are some of the very important questions that all pregnant women have, but in some pregnant women this becomes very magnified and they feel very, very stressed by this major life shift. And it is a major shift in life. And so this can psychologically predispose in very anxious people for depression and anxiety disorders. So there's many signs and symptoms of postnatal depression, and some are more obvious and some are more subtle. So we look for a range of symptoms, and probably the most common and the most pervasive is depressed mood. So this is where the woman actually does feel quite significantly sad, and she may be tearful, but this is a consistent feeling. It's not just transient, because everybody can feel sad or tearful, but it has to be maintained for most of the day and for many days of the week. And so that's a change in mood. Now, along with that, while it may be sadness, some women actually experience irritability, and they can feel very irritated by the smallest things and get very angry. So it's not always easy to pick that change in mood when it is expressed as irritability and anger. So that is another form of mood disturbance. Then we have a number of symptoms in what we call the neurovegetative or physical symptoms. This includes changes in sleep, which can be either way. It can be that the person is not sleeping enough and that they are very tired as a result of only sleeping a few hours, or it can be that they sleep too much and really are not able to get out of bed, and even if they have a long sleep, that they don't feel refreshed. So sleep changes is another symptom. Changes in appetite. Now this is very important also, because obviously the nutrition that the mother takes in, or the mother-to-be takes in, and also in postpartum, is critical for the development of the baby, either in utero or as breastfeeding mother. But with depression, the appetite can be changed and diminished, and so the woman is not taking enough food in, and she can lose weight. And that can be absolutely dangerous for both her and her baby. So sleep and appetite are body functions that are disturbed in antenatal and postnatal depression. Then we have what we call cognitive symptoms. So these are symptoms where either during pregnancy or after delivery, the woman feels that she's mentally not functioning as well as usual. And that can be things like difficulties concentrating, difficulties with memory, and difficulties having logical sequence of thinking. So often we hear this when women are saying that they may not be able to read a book or follow the sequence in a film, that they're not able to remember things that normally they would have remembered very easily. So commonly people say things like they will go shopping and not remember what it was that they wanted to buy. And so this is a memory and concentration issue. Of course, sometimes with tiredness with a new baby, this can happen in a normal, healthy mother. So we have to again look for a consistent pattern that is severe and actually interferes with the woman's life enjoyment or getting the things done that she needs to get done. Then, of course, if this progresses, there are some more severe symptoms, which include symptoms of delusion and even hallucinations. And by that I mean that the woman can actually be convinced that she is such a bad mother that she should harm herself or even kill herself. So this is suicidal thinking and sometimes leading to suicidal actions. And of course, the worst part of all of this is that sometimes, it's very rare, but sometimes the woman can feel that the baby would be better off dead also. So there is a homicide risk or risk of harm to the baby as well as to the mother. And that is the extreme end of postnatal depression. But you can see that this is absolutely something that we have to be very careful that we ask about these questions. So as well as this, there can be sometimes a sense of preoccupation with different symptoms. So this is called a somatic or body preoccupation. And sometimes women experience odd pains and aches that really do not have a physical cause. So very pronounced headaches or stomach aches or muscle aches and pains that prevents them from actually being able to do things. So that is somatic preoccupation. And sometimes also as part of the postnatal depression, there is a high level of anxiety. So this is where somebody feels very agitated, they feel their heart is racing, they feel very nervous, they can have sweating and feel panic-stricken. And so they are actually anxiety and panic symptoms, and that can be part of the postnatal depression as well, and also depression in pregnancy. The other sometimes associated symptoms are extreme cleanliness. Perinatal, so peri, around childbirth, includes both the pregnancy, antenatal mood disorder, or postnatal mood disorder, is an area of great importance in terms of research. So some of the research we are involved in is brain hormone interaction. So we know that in pregnancy there is a major change in the hormones. And this is a very large number of hormones that are affected, but predominantly it is estrogen, progesterone, and the hormones from the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus in the brain that lead to the changes in these hormones. So some of the hypotheses that we think is creating postnatal depression relates to these hormones and their interactions with brain chemicals. So mood is very much determined by a number of brain chemicals such as serotonin, the GABA neurochemicals, noradrenaline, and some of the other chemicals, which are very much impacted by the hormones. So working through the hormone changes, is not surprising that there is a brain chemistry alteration, and in some women this brain chemistry change leads to the symptoms of depression which I have described. So in thinking about what may be useful treatments, we think that hormone treatments may bring the hormone levels back to a normal situation, which will then have a flow-on effect to the brain chemistry and brain circuitry to actually then improve the depression. So this is rather new thinking, because for a long time the brain biology was not very well known. It is still an area of considerable question marks, because we are yet to find the exact cause of perinatal depression. But we think that it is obvious that the hormone shifts are going to be part of it. So there are some new approaches that we are looking at, including some of the hormone treatments in postnatal depression with a definitive change in progesterone and estrogen levels. The psychological factors are really critical. So, for example, educating women about the changes in their body and the changes as a result in their mind or their brain actually gives women a sense of what may happen or what is happening, and therefore educational knowledge is really critical to enable the woman to identify the symptoms of depression early, and also to put into context what is normal and what is abnormal, so that we don't want to make a problem where there is not a problem, but nor do we want to ignore a depression that is gathering. And sometimes it is just as important to educate the family, because the expectations on her can be unrealistic, that people are not understanding why she's not doing everything or why she is not being herself. And allowing the family to understand that this is an illness is really critical, because then you can change the dynamic of the blame or making her feel more guilty about what's going on. It's really important to evaluate what is the stress in this person's life and diminish all the possible stresses that we can to enable her to make a good recovery. By and large, if a woman is depressed in pregnancy, it is better to make sure that she is treated rather than leaving her untreated, because depression in pregnancy and postnatally will affect the baby. So it is really important that the baby is able to bond well to his or her mother, and without a functioning mother, mentally functioning mother, this baby runs the risk of then developing depression or anxiety himself or herself, and that can have long life consequences. Healthy lifestyle changes are really critical for the mother. So looking at healthy nutrition, looking at sleep, looking at adequate brain, if you like, brain food. And what does that look like? That is such things as music, art, yoga, meditation, adequate enjoyment of life. I mean, all of these things are really important for a healthy mind during pregnancy and also subsequently. The future research into perinatal psychiatry is absolutely vital, and what is emerging in the field is that the brain biology neurobiology is becoming more and more understood. We still have a long way to go, but it is being understood. And the role of hormones on mental health is being better understood. At the moment, the treatments are standard treatments for depression. So a woman who develops depression in pregnancy and postnatally is treated pretty much the same as any other woman or man. And that is inaccurate because we have a different change in neurobiology with the hormone changes. So again, I'm hoping that in the future we'll be able to harness the neurobiological information much better. Focusing on women's mental health, in particular in this area of perinatal psychiatry, is a forward-thinking process. And that will require investment by governments to ensure that there are specific maternal and infant welfare systems. In fact, in the actual obstetric and gynecology areas, that mental health is considered in both the antenatal and postnatal care for women and their babies, and that we enhance the paediatric services to look at paediatric psychology, psychiatry, and extend that back into pregnancy as well to consider the welfare of mental health in the pregnant woman. So I'm hoping that with a biopsychosocial integrated approach that we can move the field forward so that the outcomes for pregnant women and for new mothers will be much improved, because that is an investment in the future health of many generations to come.